If you have, um, if you've been through Westminster Tube recently, you may have seen some posters. There are some posters of a young woman in pajamas dancing. These are dignity and dying posters. And I went through and they're creating quite a stir, not necessarily a positive one either. I would suggest that the real face of assisted dying, and perhaps the poster face for dignity in dying, who is paid for these posters, very expensive posters to be put up all over the place, is Cyril Twos. Cyril Twos, Cyril Twos' 86-year-old bruised face should really be up on these posters. Cyril Twos was 86 years old, as I say. He was a carer who retired at age 82. He was recently, in January, told he was terminally ill. Actually, it's slightly before then, but in January, he was told he qualified for the biggest aid package so he could live at home for the remainder of his life. And then he was told it would be 10 months before he got that. Cyril Twos chose, and I use that term advisedly, an assisted death because he couldn't get the care that he needed. He could not afford private care with paying the rent at the same time. These are the people, the Cyril Twoses of this world, that are going to actually be the reality of assisted dying, not the young woman, very attractive young woman, dancing on the poster in the tube. So I just want to make 2 points. First of all, I want to make points about the bill. This discussion on the 29th is about the bill. It's not about the principle of assisted suicide. And I must admit, I have long opposed assisted suicide, assisted dying, call it what you will. But this bill, I think, is worse than I think people who support it in principle are increasingly coming and saying, I cannot support that bill. So if we're looking at very specifics, well, for instance, Sam Coates from Sky News said, there's no impact assessment until and unless the legislation passes second reading. MPs will be engaging in one of their most totemic votes of this parliament without access to all the facts and being asked to commit on what is in effect partial information. The MPs had 16 days to read the 38-page bill and to go through it and look at all of the various different problems. I've read it, not all MPs that I've spoken to have. MPs have a lot of pressure on their time. But the specifics that I thought were disturbing, first of all, it doesn't prevent doctors from proposing assisted suicide to their patients. I think that's really problematic. And that has led to some of the awful stories in Canada, like the 53-year-old woman who was just about to have a radical mastectomy for breast cancer and was suddenly made aware of the fact that she could have assisted suicide or euthanasia, as it usually is in Canada. So, as she said, she was at her absolutely lowest ebb. And people do listen to their doctors in this situation. So, and not only that, but if I was a doctor, perhaps I'd bring it up too, because all good doctors put forward treatment options, and that has to be, if this bill is passed, that will be one of them. It does not allow conscientious objection. I don't know why it's been taken out in the 67 Act. It's been taken, it was there in the Maris bill that was attempted to pass for, which was an assisted dying bill in 2016. It was in there, but they've removed it. So as a doctor, you have to make what's called an effective referral, which means you can't opt out. You must either do the act yourself, become the coordinating doctor yourself, or give it to somebody who already, who will do it. A person who can have treatment that relieves their symptoms would still be eligible, as we've heard. That counts for anorexia, could be arthritis, could be type 1 diabetes in the way that the bill is structured. There's no requirement to monitor the doctor's assessments. The doctor can assist the person to take the drugs, but not cause death. The doctor can be in the room, must stay with the patient, but does not need to be in the room. So we've got a lot of questions there. Use of a proxy to sign a form if the patient cannot is pretty open to abuse, I think. It legalizes assisted suicide for patients whose death can be reasonably expected within 6 months. As we've heard, this is a guess. It's like the weather. You can tell what it's going to be now, like next week, but 6 months down the line, no. Even more disturbingly, in some ways, Clause 23 prohibits the coroner's investigations into the death, which is just, what is happening there? Why would they do that? Why would they include that in? That's just one of the many questions. The Secretary of State must ensure that assisted suicide is available, but they are under no such duty to provide palliative care, which is surely what is needed. So, last point, we now have evidence. When I started writing about this 25 years ago, we didn't have the evidence from abroad. Now we have evidence from abroad, and regrettably, my predictions have come true. So we have autistic men, at least 9 autistic men, young men. And by the way, Sonia, the anorexic, 60 cases of anorexia are 100% women. That's worth noting with that. But these are young men. One was in his 20s. He could not make social connections, could not make friends. So his doctor euthanized him. That's, these are uncommon cases, but don't expect them to be, I think any bad death is a bad death. I agree with that sentiment from the other side, but any wrongful death like that is just as wrongful as if we were talking about capital punishment. So these are not the most common scenarios, but the most common scenario is, as I started off with, serial twos. It will be those people who fall through the cracks, who haven't got access, or who are waiting far too long for NHS services. And it will be them that takes this option, if you like. It will be them that is left with fewer and fewer options, and they will be moving. They will be the ones that not the sort of poster lady for assisted dying. It will be those sort of tragic and unnecessary deaths that I think this bill will create. So, as I say, the real face of assisted dying and who we need to keep in mind is serial twos. Thanks very much.